Hey guys, thanks so much for joining DriveChats today. Whether you're watching the YouTube video or listening to the podcast, stay tuned. Hey guys, thanks so much for tuning in. Today I am going to be talking about the big bad debate about carbs. So I think that carbohydrates have really gotten a bad rep, especially the past few years. And even for myself, I was in that mindset that carbs are the enemy. I didn't really understand their purpose. I knew that, white bread was bad, and I was putting a morality on carbohydrates and putting it on food in general. And I really didn't understand the purpose behind eating carbohydrates that are fiber filled for sustainable energy. And that is a huge mindset shift because, growing up, we weren't really taught, especially in school, we weren't taught the purpose of carbs. We were just, mom made a sandwich, or somebody made a sandwich, or somebody made those lunchable pizzas and they sent them, and we didn't really understand why we were eating these carbohydrates. So what I've really started to learn since I've been exploring nutrition and I've really been learning the purpose behind fueling our bodies is that fiber too, but carbohydrates, especially fiber-filled carbohydrates, are essential to sustainable energy. And some may argue that, you can use fat as fuel. And that's true, but I personally don't find that cutting out an entire macro group is sustainable. Just from personal experience, that's what works for me. And somebody else may have a different nutrition path, and that's fine. To each their own. And finding out what works for you and remaining flexible and sustainable is key. So for me, what I've really been learning about lately, as far as my own body, and seeing it in my clients as well, is really learning the purpose of our carbs and keeping that purpose in mind. Not putting morality on food, not labeling a food as good or bad, and just really saying, why am I eating this? Am I eating enough fiber? And is this for energy? Is this for pleasure? Is this an emotional thing? Because there are different types of hunger, and we're not always actually truly hungry. And carbohydrates help you create that sustainable energy. So, for example, whereas maybe before you were having a piece of white bread, or a flour tortilla, instead you can go ahead and try swapping out for something better. So try swapping out for a multigrain toast, or some fruit, especially berries. They tend to be lower in carbohydrates, but they have fiber in them. So those are good things that you can swap out. Maybe you stick to like whole foods, foods that are grown. Maybe bread isn't your thing, or if you want to swap out pasta, maybe instead of white pasta you choose multigrain pasta, or something like miracle noodles, or zucchini noodles, or some type of veggie noodles that still have that fiber, and they still have a little bit of carbs in them, because we have to remember too that vegetables have carbs, generally lower carb depending on what the veggie is, unless it's a starchier veggie like sweet potatoes, or butternut squash, or things like that. But we really have to kind of shift our mindset into carbs are not the enemy. So for myself, what I found is that during the week I tend to eat and have greater results with a lower carbohydrate diet, in the essence of bread, wraps, things like that. But I can still have fruit like bananas or berries, and those tend to be my go-to. But I've also found that ever so often I need to eat a few more carbs during the day, fiber-filled carbs, not simple carbs, but complex carbs. And I need to eat a few of them more during the day. For instance, when I'm lifting a little bit heavier, and tracking has really helped me see what I need it, when I need it, and be really flexible with my nutrition. And that's where it goes to finding what works for you. So these diets like Atkins or keto, they may work for somebody, but in the end you really have to ask yourself, is this going to be a sustainable approach to nutrition for your entire life? Is this going to be something that you can see yourself maintaining forever, and finding that balance and actually enjoying it? And some people can. I know a lot of people who have success with it. I personally didn't, but again, you have to really step out of that mindset of these cookie cutter diets and this giving this food morality, and really not labeling things as good or bad, but you're making food choices, and you're making either a choice or a better choice. And you really have to keep those things in mind when you're discussing food, because it really does affect your mindset. The way you talk about food generally affects how you view food, mindset wise. So whether you're thinking of something as positive or negative, it really affects, it can affect your results. So you really need to keep that in mind. And like I've said in a previous podcast, positivity can change everything in your diet. So if you are saying, I'm not making a bad choice, but I could make a better choice, as far as carbohydrates go, or protein or anything like that. Obviously whole foods are going to be better. Some people do have, dietary restrictions for conditions that they have, as far as like IBS or things like that. But each individual is different, and a cookie cutter diet with, so many amount of carbs is not maybe gonna fulfill you and keep you satisfied and keep you enjoying food and keeping that positive mindset around food, as to where if you were tracking and you were listening to your body and what it was telling you it needs, and knowing the purpose for things like carbohydrates and proteins and veggies, you're going to be a lot more successful, and you're really going to start to get into this natural flow of knowing what your body needs, really listening to your body, and realizing that you have to be flexible in your diet, and you're not going to be able to follow these strictly. We have to keep a really open mind when it comes to nutrition, and really just track and see what works for you. And carbohydrates really fall into that. And another thing that I have learned recently, during a certification of the nutrition program that I myself am following, I learned that there are different types of hunger, and one of the things that I really found interesting was the link between not getting enough sleep and your craving for carbohydrates. So when you are tired, you didn't get enough sleep, I have noticed, and it was like a light bulb moment for me when this information was presented to me, was that I have noticed too, when I'm not getting enough sleep, I crave more carbs. And that is my body telling me, hey, you didn't get enough energy from sleep, whether it was broken up, or you just didn't sleep well, or the quality wasn't great, that I crave more carbs when I have not had enough sleep. So as a new mom, a mom of I'm not a new mom. I have a 3-year-old and a 5-month-old, but being that I do get, because I'm still nursing this interrupted sleep. I have noticed on the days that my daughter's up nursing more during the night that I have these cravings for carbohydrates. And instead of kind of ignoring them and not listening to my body, I do tend to have more carbohydrates on those days, but I focus on fiber-filled whole food carbohydrates. So that's multigrain toast with seeds and things like that in it, or like I said, fruit, or and really focusing on other macros as well, like getting lots of veggies that have fiber, and that are lower carbs, and getting lots of volume, more volume. I really noticed that I'm starting, because I'm tracking and I'm learning about these different groups, like macro groups, that I'm really noticing I'm able to like intuitively listen to what my body needs, and that each and every day is going to be a bit different. And I just kind of have to go with the flow, especially as a mom. But it makes me less impulsive to grab these simple carbs that I know wouldn't fuel my body, as well as these complex carbs, these whole food carbohydrates. So I really think it's important to address that. How do you think about carbs? Have you been brought up, or have you had this mindset of carbs are the bad guy, carbs make you fat? And I hear that a lot, especially with people coming off keto. And I was like that too. There was a lot of guilt surrounding carbs and anxiety surrounding carbs. And that was the best thing I did for myself, was really learn the purpose. And while learning the purpose, keeping that in mind when I go to fuel my body. So things like sugar, things like white bread, white pasta, even for myself, and this may not be for everybody, but white rice tends to be a trigger for me to want more carbs, and more simple carbs, not more multigrain, whole food carbs. And you really have to learn and see what works for you. And if you want to treat yourself every once in a while, you can, but just be aware that those foods can be triggers for you to slip into bad habits, to affect your emotions, to affect mindset and things like that. So just really keep that in mind. Really focus on fueling your body with these proper foods that you need, and taking away that mindset of carbs are the enemy, carbs are going to make me fat, because that's not true. If you eat, too many carbs for what your body needs, but that's if you eat too much protein, if it really just depends on what works for you as an individual, and learning to listen to your body, and learning to really be in sync and track and see this many carbs worked for me today, and kind of seeing what all ties in together, because it's all correlated, and tracking is going to help you learn which correlations you can benefit from and which ones you can improve on. So I am now here to pick up my toddler from preschool. I thank you guys so much for joining me. I really hope this was helpful for you. And if you are watching the YouTube video, do not forget to check out my podcast. It's available on almost every major platform for podcasts. And give me some feedback, subscribe, share, comment, and like. Thank you guys so much for joining me today and sharing this time with me. Whether you're listening to the podcast or the YouTube video, I really appreciate you taking the time to learn this information, give me feedback. Please do not forget to comment, like, and share with everyone you think this would be relevant for, and let me know what you guys would be interested in learning or discussing. Thanks so much.